Welcome, Gautam, to our show, which is known as the Global Talks. We do it at the New Indian Express more frequently, mostly weekly, and we discuss topical subjects, what is happening in the diplomacy, international relations. And you are one of the best persons who have been in diplomacy for more than 30 years, or more than 3 decades, 3.5 decades. And you have been at very important places at the right time. You were in China, you were in Pakistan as well. Now, I want to start with one thing. Mr. Doval, our National Security Advisor, is right now in Beijing. I don't know how many, this is 23rd round of talks or whatever. I remember the talks started when Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was there. 203 was the first, I think 2003 was the first dialogue between PR, what they call the representative level SR, I think they call it. So you were there at that time, I remember. So this talk which is happening, do you think it's taking us somewhere or it's just a talk for the sake of talk?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And you are absolutely right, Prabhuji, that this was initiated by the then Prime Minister of India, Mr. Vajpayee, when he visited China. I think it was in 2003, you're right.
2003, I was there.
You were there, absolutely.
Yes. Jaswant Sinha was the foreign minister and I interviewed him there.
Absolutely. So the idea was that, the special representatives of the leaders of India and China would discuss the boundary question between our two countries and would try to see if they could resolve the boundary question. Now, as you rightly said, this is the 23rd round of talks at the special representatives level. But I don't think we're any closer to resolving the India-China boundary question than we were earlier also. I think what has become very important is that, it's difficult for the two countries to solve the boundary question, but I think it is important for the two countries to keep talking. And that is what is happening. I don't expect any great outcome. I don't expect any great outcome from this particular meeting, but it will be one more small step ahead of us. So they're taking very small steps together. And I think the important part of this SR's meeting is the very fact that they are talking to each other. It is better than not talking to each other at all. So I don't expect anything very significant to come out of the SR's talks. But I think the very fact that the SRs are talking to each other is an important.
Yeah, do you think that has the India-China relationship generally moved beyond 2020 crisis? This was the Galwan crisis.
Yeah, it's a very good question that you're asking. In my opinion, the India-China relationship there was a huge setback in 2020 when the Chinese army, the Chinese PLA, the Chinese troops moved their forces into Eastern Ladakh. After that, there has been very slow attempts to try to bring the relationship back on track. But in my opinion, it is not yet back what the relationship was in 2019. We're nowhere near that even today, 6 years after the Galwan crisis and 6 years after the Eastern Ladakh crisis.
No, I just want to ask Ambassador one more question. You see, is China now prepared to discuss boundaries politically? Or is Beijing primarily interested in managing the LAC?
No, I think they are open to discussing the boundary, but I think, the Chinese have to come to the boundary talks, to the SR's talks with a more practical approach. You can't start a boundary negotiation with India by saying that the whole of Arunachal Pradesh is ours, which is nonsense. We can have small adjustments in the line, which we can call the boundary, but you cannot start with the position that whole of Arunachal Pradesh is ours. So I think the Chinese need to go back to the drawing board. They need to decide what will be their starting position in the boundary talks. Only then it can make progress. But if the Chinese start with a position that whole of Arunachal is ours, then there is no possibility, there's no meeting of minds which can take place. So I think China needs to do some thinking rather than taking military options like they did in 2020 by moving their troops, not only in Galwan, but in a whole lot of other places in Eastern Ladakh. They should talk about it and come to the table with a plan. And we also need to have a plan. I think we do, but China needs to be more practical when it comes to the negotiating table, either at the SR's talks or any other talks.
Yeah, Ambassador, I want to ask you one fundamental question. In 2003 and 2005 later, 2003, there was some kind of a breakthrough because China first time accepted Sikkim as a full-fledged state of India. Vajpayee's successful visits were there at that time. So what do you think would be the breakthrough between Beijing and India with starting a 23rd round of talks or whatever, when Mr. Modi meets him again next month or this month, where we're going to meet twice, I think, recently. But I'm asking you, between Doval and his counterpart, they met, and Foreign Minister of China, they met. What would you call some kind of a progress from 2020 onward? What would be the signal you can read? If that happens, then you can say it is a success. Otherwise, just a visit.
I think, you will remember, Prabhuji, that there was a process where after 2003, after the SRs was established, there was a process which had been started where the two countries were actually exchanging maps with their idea of what is their own country, what is India, and the Chinese would also show maps which are what is China. And then you can start narrowing the differences. So that process of exchanging of maps stopped sometime in 2007 or 2008. And I think that was a big setback. If they can start talking about boundary by exchanging of maps, that will be a big step forward. That will be a new process. It will be a new way forward for the two countries. But I think China has not been willing to do that for many, many years now. So I think if they actually get to a situation where the two countries, the two sides, the two governments can exchange maps of what they consider to be part of India and what the Chinese consider to be part of China, that will be a new starting point, a good starting point for boundary negotiations between.
I would like to ask you, because I remember this dialogue of exchanging the maps. Have the maps been actually drawn or not by both sides? Because I remember one of the dialogues happened that the work start on drawing the maps. But on our side, Indian side, have we drawn our maps?
Yeah. No, so as you know, Prabhuji, there are three separate sectors of the India-China boundary. There is the eastern sector in Arunachal Pradesh, there is a middle sector in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarachal, and of course, there is the western sector in Ladakh. So we had started by exchanging maps of the middle sector, and that had been quite a good process. But when it came to exchanging maps of the western sector of the India-China boundary, the talks broke down at that stage, especially based on the
Western means you're talking about Ladakh side.
I'm talking about Ladakh, yes.
Okay. Where they went and captured some part of it near Sikkim and whatnot.
So we need to resume that process, and I hope that we can move to that stage. But the Chinese have been unwilling to do that. But they need to get back to the serious negotiations on the boundary.
Well, if you go back to, Modi and Jinping have been meeting quite frequently. I think they have met 7-8 times during the past 10 years, and there was a gap in between. Well, the question I want to ask is, why it has failed to produce a durable solution to the border problem? Because no other prime minister had this kind of equation, our prime minister got. Therefore, we call it Modi diplomacy rather than anything else.
No, the point is that the boundary issue is quite a complex issue, and it is not extremely easy to resolve it. But the process which was put into place of exchanging maps, if that itself breaks down, then how do you move ahead? So that is the point I'm making, that we need to resume that process of exchanging maps of the western sector, then even of the eastern sector, if we are going to negotiate about how to draw the boundary between us. So it's a very complex issue, but you need to show that you are serious about the negotiation, about deciding on a boundary between the two countries.
I'm asking this question because personality-driven diplomacy is happening all over the world now. It's Trump with dictating terms, it is Putin with dictating terms. Wherever you go, the big powerful leaders are now dictating the terms of engagement. And both Xi and Modi are very powerful leaders on their hand. They have been in office for a longer time than anybody else, like Putin has been in office. Don't you think that Modi chemistry with Xi actually changed, or both leaders are simply managing an unavoidable rivalry, which is a permanent feature?
Look, what the point you make is very valid, that there are strong leaders in many countries, including in India and China. But I think eventually, basically, it is the interests of each country which drives the whole process. So I think we have to, India and China need to start a very serious process of negotiating the boundary. I think for the last few years, definitely, the SR stocks have been focusing on many other things, which may also be important to the relationship, but they have been focusing on many other things rather than focusing on negotiating a boundary resolution or solving the boundary question.
Look at the relationship. This is dichotomy, there is inconsistency, there is contradiction. We are moving ahead in terms of economic relationship. We have opened our economy for Chinese. We have lifted many sanctions against their products, and we are letting them come into India. And after that, you have this fight going on border side. As an ambassador to China, and you must be knowing inside, what is holding? Is a piece of land which they are fighting, Chinese want to claim?
No, the point is there are large pieces of land. It's not just a small piece of land. If you look at the Chinese keep saying that the whole of Arunachal Pradesh is theirs, and I mentioned that earlier in this program. So that is a huge amount of territory. And I think that's totally unrealistic because actually the control of the whole of Arunachal Pradesh is in Indian hands. And we control right up till what we think is the Macmillan line. And they cannot start from a position saying that this is ours. But I think I'll leave that to the current governments to handle.
Yeah, basically fight is for Arunachal and part of western side, you are saying. That is what is happening. But I'm trying to raise a question here because it is happening from when Nehruji was there, from there it is happening. And Nehru was betrayed after Panchil, what happened. The history you go back, the Chinese have been always betraying. Now, Indian opposition is also taking on the Prime Minister because some land has been taken away, it was not taken or not, given back or not. So these are the questions, why this diplomacy rise about this, why Chinese leaders from 1955, 61 onwards are not able to reconcile whether LAC or Macmillan line. They can resolve this issue or not. It's not resolvable, it seems. Politics is more important. But Communist Party is there. There's one party rule. One leader decides. Here we have a democracy. We have to be accountable to opposition. We have to everybody else. So why can't that powerful Chinese leader take a decision?
No, that you'll have to ask them. I have no idea.
Because you must be knowing the psyche of these people because you have been there.
No, I think for them also it's a very difficult problem which they have to which they have to resolve. It's not easy for them also. There is some degree of public pressure, but I think what is important is that we must start a very serious negotiation about where the boundary lies between our two countries. So India also has a very important position on the boundary, which is it should be a comprehensive package solution for all sectors of the India-China boundary. So we don't want to pick and choose one sector because then you will get into negotiation only on that one sector. You won't be able to negotiate saying that, okay, I'll make a concession in the eastern sector, you make a concession in the western sector.
Yeah, but there is the other problem which I'm trying to figure out because there's some kind of a triangle happening. At the moment, Dr. Jaishankar is also in Moscow. He's talking to them because Putin is likely to come to India. Doval is in Beijing, and our Piyush to Japan, he has gone to Japan, but it's a trade relationship. So how do you think that the simultaneous engagement with Beijing and Moscow, deliberate strategy, is it balancing or simply normal diplomacy before BRICS?
No, it is normal diplomacy, but you must understand that international politics or geopolitics has changed a lot in the last few years, particularly from the beginning of Trump's second term. What has happened and why geopolitics has changed is because what was till very recently a unipolar world where the Americans or the US was the single most important power in the world. Now, China has become a very important power also, particularly economically, but also increasingly militarily. So, because of that, there is huge competition between the United States on one hand and China on the other. Also, the United States under President Trump is beginning to retreat a little bit. It is now saying that its major area of interest is in the Americas, so around it in its immediate neighborhood. So because of that, international politics has changed tremendously, and it is making it possible for countries to have new equations and new friendships, new strategic partnerships, and you can see that happening in the world. For example, the fact that India and the EU have now concluded their free trade agreement and it should come into effect very, very soon is something which has happened because of this new dynamics in international politics. The other thing which has recently happened, you would have noticed, and your readers and viewers would have noticed, is that there is this Mecca Pact which has been signed
Yeah,
by
I read
Pakistan,
this. We had
Turkey,
a
and
podcast with
Australia.
Manjeet Puri last week on that
All,
issue.
all of this is because geopolitics or international politics has loosened up and has become, there are new relationships which can be formed, new partnerships which can be formed, new alliances which can be formed. And that's why
Is it,
you find India is also very
is,
active.
You raised a very interesting issue. I'm coming back to that. I'll come little later. But talking of why I'm talking about China, Russia, and India. Russia has been quite a dependable ally of India for many years, 150 decades, trustworthy person and whatever. And China and Russia have also good relations with each other. While China, when it comes to Pakistan, chooses India over Pakistan. When it comes to China, it chooses Pakistan over India. This kind of contradiction, can Russia be used to normalize relationship? Because Russia has the levers, a good relationship. Why Russia has never been used? Has it been used ever to talk to China or discuss anything between India and whatnot?
No, I think we have, the Russians are very strong partnership with India. And in fact, as you know, that it was Russia which insisted that India become a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, a meeting of which is to take place later this month.
Yeah.
And where our Prime Minister will be meeting with both the Chinese president and the Russian president and a few others also. So, and then later, of course, for the BRICS summit, which is to be held in Delhi in the second week of September. I think both of the leaders from Russia and China are also expected to come here. So I think Russia is in play and Russia is part of this whole process. But eventually, a boundary problem between India and China has to be sorted out by these two countries.
Bilateral issue.
It's mainly a bilateral issue, and we need to be discussing it with each other. I agree with you.
He advised him, sent me a question. He said, you must ask him. Frankly, I won't name him. And he said, they ask him a specific question, ask him a definite answer. Are India and China moving towards cooperation, coexistence, or merely a more sophisticated form of competition?
No, see, look, you have to accept that between any two countries, there is both elements of cooperation and competition. It is true of India and China. It is even true of India and the US. And it is even true of India and Russia to a certain extent. The degrees of competition and the degree of cooperation will differ. But in all relationships, there is an element of cooperation, there's an element of competition, and that is true even with China. Now, the Chinese always keep saying one thing, and I'll be undiplomatic here. The Chinese keep saying that India and China are not rivals. We are partners in development. So yes, we are to a certain extent, we are partners in development, but there
Oh,
is no doubt that we are also rivals on many other things. If you look at many of the subjects, we are rivals. We are rivals where international politics is concerned. We are rivals where the boundary question is concerned. We are rivals where the Pakistan question is concerned. So there is a degree of rivalry and a degree of cooperation or a degree of partnership in all relationships.
No, let me use an old proverb or whatever I'm to say, on your opinion from that there's a saying that in diplomacy or any relationship, you go one step forward, two step backward, or two step forward, one step backward. Which one is correct in this case? Are we going two step backward, one step forward, or two step forward and one step backward?
In the
Are we
case of
going two
India
step
and China,
backward, one step forward, or two step forward and one step backward?
no. So I will take it in a longer term perspective, not in the perspective of Mr. Doval's visit. But if you look from 2019, what the Chinese did in Eastern Ladakh, where they brought their troops, and we had the Galwan problem, and all over Eastern Ladakh, that was 10 steps backwards in the India-China relationship. And now we have taken 2 or 3 steps forward. So overall, if you look at it from 2019 to 2026, a period of 7 years, I would say India-China relations have gone backward really and not gone forward.
To the same level pre-2029, you are talking about that. Many things have to be done. This visit is just optics at the moment.
No, I won't say it is only optics. It is important for the two countries to talk to each other because that process of talking helps to build the trust and confidence within the two countries. Trust and confidence was shattered when the Chinese did Eastern Ladakh in 2020, summer of 2020. And now there will be a slow process of rebuilding that trust and confidence. And Mr. Doval's visit this time is one step in that direction. So I won't say that it is only optics. There is some substance to it. But overall, if you look at it from 2019 to today, because of Eastern Ladakh, we took 10 steps backward, and that was the fault of the Chinese leadership. They were the ones who did the military operation in Eastern Ladakh, started the military operation in Eastern Ladakh. 10 steps backward, we have only taken 2 or 3 steps forward.
I would like to conclude last with my assertion that we have miles to go before we sit down and talk again.
Absolutely true. I agree with you there, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for coming and talking to us on Global Talks. We'll meet again next time. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much. Well, this was for Global Talks today. Before I sign off, I request you to subscribe to my channel, watch, share, and put your comments, good or bad, sweet or bitter. I will read them, but will never mind. Subscribe to New Indian Express YouTube channel. Thank you very much.